All right, we're going to take a look at the bodyweight squat. All right, the bodyweight squat is kind of the foundation movement for the squatting pattern exercises that we're going to look at. The bodyweight squat, there's a couple different ways I do it. We've got the kind of the stretching way, or what I like to see as far as being able to demonstrate proper mobility of the hip, the knee, and the ankle joint. And that is just to simply squat so that I can sit all the way down with my hamstrings on my calves with my feet totally flat. All right? This shows that I've got good mobility at my ankle joint, and my knee joint, and my hip joint, that I can squat all the way down like this without shifting my weight forward onto the balls of my feet. Now, that's kind of an argument, and I've seen, arguments from both sides of the whole squatting on the balls of the feet. I've seen pictures of wrestlers and combative sport athletes that squat down onto the balls of the feet with their back totally straight. You see ballet performers that can, get up on their toes and squat down deep. They're, in my opinion, a bit of an exception. For the average person that's just looking for health, they typically don't have the knee structure that can handle a squat like that. So what I want to see is that the foot is flat with the weight distributed evenly between the front and the back of the foot, and that you can squat down deep with that heel planted and not have to shift your weight up onto the balls of your feet. So again, this position here, I like to see people able to get in with no resistance, no effort to get down there. And then once you're down there, you should be able to sit here. All right? So that is a full, deep, hamstrings on calves, what people often refer to as ass to grass or ATG squat. Now, in order for me to get down there, I've got to round my spine. I've got to allow my pelvis to tuck under a little bit, which is something I would never do with a load on my back. If I've got compression on the spine, I don't want those spinal joints moving at all. I want that spine to stay locked in a neutral position. That's the best way to ensure health of your discs between your vertebrae. If you've got a load pressing down on the spine and your spinal joints are shifting like this, that's wreaking havoc on those discs. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining a completely neutral spine when we squat under load, and that is what determines the depth. For me, for my clients, and for the athletes I work with, I will never allow movement of the spine, whether the load is held to the front of the body, like a goblet squat, or whether the load's on the back, like a barbell back squat. Now, what is a neutral spine? I like to use a dowel rod to demonstrate this. If I hold a dowel rod against my back, you're going to see that my sacrum, my tailbone, my thoracic spine, my upper back, and my head are all in contact with the dowel rod. We've got opposing curves in the cervical spine and the neck, and in the lumbar spine, the lower back. This is a neutral spine. A spine that is neutral is not perfectly straight. We have those normal curves in the spine, and we want to maintain those when we squat under load. Again, we don't want those spinal joints shifting at all. So that is what I use to determine the depth in a loaded squat, which we're going to look at in some of the other squatting exercises we do in this exercise index. The back squat with the barbell on the back. We looked at some of the kettlebell squats and things like that as well. We want to make sure the spine is held neutral during those exercises. So I should be able to squat without any deviation in that spine. Once I feel that pelvis kind of tucking away and that back flattening out as I go down, I'm going down too far, all right, for me. So I can fold at the hips and still maintain a neutral spine and get down nice and deep before I come up. But if I want to go all the way down, ass to grass as people call it, watch what happens. My lower back flattens out. My pelvis tucks under. And I never want to do that with a load on the back. All right? So really, what a lot of people refer to when they're talking about an ass to the grass squat is just simply a well below parallel squat. All right? Where the crease at the top of the hip is well below the top of the knee. But it's not truly ass to grass because their hamstrings are not resting on their calves. It's just a good, deep, well below parallel squat. In powerlifting terminology, breaking parallel simply refers to this crease at the top of the hip going below the top of your knee. So in powerlifting competition, when that crease at the top of the hip breaks the plane of the top of the knee, you've squatted below parallel. It is not a super, super deep squat. It is just simply breaking that parallel position. So that's what's referred to in breaking parallel. You often hear that a lot. So obviously a parallel squat would be squatting down to the point that the crease of the hip is in line with the top of the knee. So, I don't like to get too caught up in the definition of, what's parallel, what's below parallel. There's plenty of arguments on the internet about that stuff. I just want to see my clients and my athletes squat as deep as they possibly can, maintaining proper spinal alignment. If they can't get very deep, then we're going to focus on the strength of the glutes, the hamstrings. Maybe it's a flexibility or mobility issue. There are other things to factor when looking at the depth of a squat. But most people should be able to squat in a loaded format down to a parallel thigh position. All right, so that's kind of clearing up what a squat is, a parallel squat, a below parallel squat, a full squat. With, again, the biggest issue is that the spine is held neutral whenever we're doing a loaded squat. So if we look at a bodyweight squat, I'm simply getting in my squat position, feet are slightly wider than shoulder width, toes could be forward or slightly out, and I'm going to squat by folding at my hips first and sitting back and down, pushing my knees out like I'm trying to spread the ground with my feet, keeping my chest up, my chin packed so that my spine is completely neutral, and then standing back up by pushing the hips forward as I come up. So again, I'm going to squat down, pushing the hips back, and then coming back up. And again, I'm always squatting as deep as I can while maintaining that neutral spine. If my pelvis starts to tuck under, I've gone too far, particularly in a loaded squat. So I'm only going to squat as deep as I can, maintaining a neutral spine, and then come back up. And if I can't get very deep, I'm going to focus on flexibility and strengthening weak muscle groups. So that's our bodyweight squat. Again, the stance, slightly wider than hip width with the toes forward or slightly out. When I say slightly out, if I'm looking at a clock, we're talking about 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock with the right foot and the left foot. Start the movement by folding, by hinging at the hips and sitting back, keeping that chest up and the spine neutral, keeping that chin packed in and not looking up. Then we're going to squat down. We're going to push the knees apart like we're spreading the ground with our feet, and then come right back up. And that's your simple bodyweight squat.